Oh, urban sketching. It's not my best thing. And it's weird because I used to do a lot of architectural rendering as an illustrator. And I think that's the whole problem. It had to be technically perfect, or at least very tight and very accurate. Urban sketching, though, is a different deal. So how do you deal with overwhelming complexity? Well, I'm still grappling with that, but today we're going to show you how I tackled it. I came away with a rough sketch at Virginia City. That's in Nevada. I wanted to come away with something that reminded me of the day. And I used gouache. I used it like watercolor. So there's another lesson for you. Let's get into it. Well, hello there, minders. Welcome back to the Mind of Watercolor. Well, this was the piece that I did at Virginia City at Pace. This was our second day of paint outs, and as you can see, this is actually a screen cap. As you can see, I didn't get very far. I was least happy with this day and what I had, and it's just one of those things, it was overwhelming complexity. It was a cool sort of old west town. One of the mistakes I made is going right in with a brush and not drawing. Here's a better view of what I was. These are actually two different scenes or two different shots that I can kind of amalgamate, if you will. I actually forgot to take a picture. Those are screen caps from other parts of video. So I just kind of messed up all the way around. Should have had a good picture. But regardless, it was a very complex scene. And I'm trying to figure out now how to fix it. As I mentioned, I should have drawn the scene out rather than just going right in with a brush, which that works sometimes with landscape. Doesn't work very well with architecture. And as you can also see, I have a very vignette-y sort of piece going here, which is how I like to work, especially on location. I think vignettes are a great way to zero in on one particular spot. So what am I doing to fix this? Well, first of all, this is gouache, and I wanted to make a point of how you can build up gouache from almost transparent watercolor to opacity if you need it. And we'll see some examples of that coming. But right now I'm using it fairly transparently like watercolor. The first thing I wanted to do is go in and just find those bold, dark shadow areas. Just really strengthen those and make that drama a little more prevalent. Also adding some color to the shadows, a little more blue. I didn't have a neutral tint on this palette. I had black, and that kind of deadens things. So, but as we go into this, we'll get a little more color. You can see me adding some right there. And I just need to get those values more dynamic. But again, not really sure what I wanted to do here. The problem is that I didn't have much of a drawing, as I've mentioned. And so I didn't want to put in a lot of complicated stuff. There were cars kind of below this. I wanted to focus on that bell tower. That was the most interesting part. And what you saw me doing just before the sky was getting some of that white gouache involved, just to kind of clean up some edges. And you'll see more of that. And here I'm just going back to more of a transparent wash in the sky. And that's how it can be used like watercolor. So here again is the gouache aspect. Trying to clean up some of those bright edges that face the light. Just enhance that drama. Everything was just way sketchy, and it will continue to be sketchy, but I'm just trying to get a little more definition in places. So therefore, white gouache. And it was a good way to add little dots and highlight sparkles, if you will. Now what I'm doing on this brick face is just enhancing the color a bit. Everything was starting to look dead. And I was really not sure what I wanted to do here. I was just kind of thinking it through, taking it a step at a time, seeing what worked, what didn't. A little more gouache involved to sharpen up a corner up there. It finally occurred to me that I needed a little more presence, a little more of the scene. But I didn't want to go drawing in a bunch of buildings that were hard to kind of make out, if you will. Oh, and by the way, what I'm doing here is just some faux detail. I thought, get some little bits and pieces in here because of how complex the scene was. Sometimes that works. I don't like detail for detail's sake. It needs to serve a purpose. But here's what I finally decided to do. And that's put in the telephone poles. And I know what you may be thinking. Like, oh, come on, telephone poles are ugly. That's what we try to take out of pictures. Well, actually, in this case, I thought it was a good abstract design element. Here you can see, again, all the overwhelming complexity of the scene. And I thought, well, let's just try it. I've got nothing to lose. And even as an Old West town, I looked it up. Telephone and telegraph poles went back to the mid 1800s. So it could have been authentic, regardless of how modern these ones looked. And my plan here was just to use them as an abstract design element, just to give this piece a little more presence and context and place. And when it came to that, I really thought it worked. I was very pleased. At first, I wasn't sure, and then it was like, that's not bad. So at the very least, what it did was gave me more of a satisfaction of seeing the scene as I remember it, of recording something I saw, of a place that I stood in and observed and painted. So that aspect I thought was really great and was very pleased. From this point on, I just went and added more faux detail. Faux detail is just meant to show some of those windows and shadow shards, if you will, little color bits. And sometimes that can get away from you. It can work or it cannot work. In this case, I thought it was working. So I went ahead with it. Here you can see, again, just if you look at it abstractly, like little blocks of color, little blocks of shadow and dark. If you pick judiciously, and here you can see I'm just really darkening that one shadow, you can really start to get a feel for how the street scene looked. At least a little piece of it. A lot of it just came down to shadows and getting some nice little contrasts in there. Well, here we are finishing it up. More of that faux detail. And I'm pretty happy with it at this point. I feel like I've got something that represents the day and the spot that I was painting in. Wish I'd gotten further with it like this on location. But hey, I usually finish these in the studio anyway. And this felt like, in the end, something that I would be satisfied with as a plein air sketch. But don't put these details in unless you're trying to draw the eye or break up some spot in a meaningful way. Details don't make something more realistic. They just make for details. And sometimes, though, they will add a texture, sort of a presence to the scene, a feel of something actually happening in those shadows and in those highlights that you might not have gotten if you had actually just tried to paint an object. A lot of cases, the details you see or saw, the ones I'm trying to hint at, suggest, and that's all this is suggestion. A lot of those, you really can't even tell what they are. So I do a lot of squinting in this case, a lot of squinting just to see what those little elements look like. So let's do a little bit of a before and after. This is where I'm going to leave it. Here's where we started, sort of the foundation. Here's where we ended. I'll take that. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you watching. Thank you so much, patrons, for continuing to support this channel. We will see everybody in the next video. Bye-bye.